Hey, I'm Scott and I'm an American in Bangkok. I was running out of money. Uh, I was blowing money, going out, partying, drinking, traveling around, going here, going there, wanting to see the sights. And my bank account got beneath $1,000. And I had no income other than the $1,000 a month that I was promised by my friend in Southern California, who was to pay me. The deal was he'd pay me $1,000 a month for 2 years, and he had been paying me faithfully. And I kind of figured, well, I got this thousand coming, and at the time that was all the way up to about 52,000 baht a month. So I was able to be, I was living comfortably, and I had no bills basically. So I wasn't all that worried, but I was just starting to get that twinge of, oh shit, I'm not sure this is such a good situation. And then I tried to slow down a little bit, but I wasn't really doing very well. And I waited for the money to come, and a day passed, and another day passed, and it was 3 or 4 days past the date that he was supposed to pay me. And uh, I don't remember exactly how much I had, but I didn't have very much money. And I had this girlfriend that I had been going out with for a couple of months, and I wasn't paying her, but when we went out, I would usually pay. Once in a while, she would pay, and every once in a while, she liked to party a little bit, and we'd go out, and she'd say, I got 10,000 baht, and I just want to spend it just to go out and party. And I'd be like, well, maybe you should put 5,000 away and stash it and blow 5,000 on partying, but don't blow the whole 10,000. But she didn't. She would never have that. She wouldn't listen. She would buy her girlfriends drinks and buy me drinks, and it was fun. But I guess I could say I should have known better. She should have known better. Anyway, I can't control her, so. But I started getting really low on money. And then what happened was, after a couple of days, I was getting pissed. And I was like, you know what? I got to call this guy up. I got to find out. It's not like him. So I called up at about 3 in the morning after a night out. And his wife answered. And his wife said, well, right now he's with a customer. Can he call you back? I know he wants to talk to you. And I said, well, okay, please have him call me. And I waited and waited by the phone. And about 4 o'clock, he called me back. And I said, hey, listen, I've been waiting for my money. Where is it? Well, I got something to tell you. I'm not going to be able to pay you. And I said, what do you mean you're not going to be able to pay me? And of course I was pissed. I was like, I'm going to come back there. I'm going to break your legs. You're going to pay. You're going to pay me one way or the other. You made a deal. You owe me the money. He said, listen, it's not that I don't want to pay you. I really don't have the money. And here's the deal. When I sold my business to him, I sent out a letter to all the customers. And that letter said, I really appreciate your business. It's been nice working with you, but I've decided to sell the business and move on to something else. So your plates, your artwork, your negatives, they're going to be transferred over to the company that I sold my business to. And if you want the artwork and everything back and you'd like to go somewhere else, that's fine. He will be happy to give this stuff back to you. But if you want to stay with him, he's a great printer. I've known him for a long time. Good guy. So give him a chance. And I called some of the better customers and I told them exactly what I was doing, that I was going to move to Thailand for a year and that I needed to do it. I felt that I didn't have much time left to just pick up and leave, and if things didn't work out, I wanted to be able to come back home, and I wanted to still be young, or young enough. And so most were very understanding, and but what he told me was that most of the customers didn't want to do business with him. It wasn't anything personal, but they were just of the opinion that, listen, it's my artwork, and I'll choose the printer and I'll do the shopping around, And a lot of the people, they ended up leaving. They didn't want to stay with him. He figured, what he said to me was, I figured that I would be able to uh, pick up your customer list, your customer base, and at least keep about 75% of them, and I would make money, and it might be slow in the beginning, but in the long run, the investment would pay off, and I would make quite a bit of money, and it would be a worthwhile investment. It didn't happen that way. Maybe 20% stayed with him, and the rest either just left their artwork and never did any more work, or they picked up their stuff and went elsewhere. But uh, by his account, he wasn't making enough money, and the idea was that he would make the money from my customers, that would give him enough money to pay me, and he'd have extra money, and then things would be perfect. Well, they weren't perfect, because he underestimated the loyalty that my customers had to me and to doing things the way that they wanted, and he only kept about 20% of the customers, something like that. And then, that was a major problem. But I said to him, listen, you're going to have to pay me something, because you owe me, I think it was about $13,000. I was like, that's just bullshit. I'm sorry if you can't make it, but you owe me the money. You made an agreement. We shook on it, and this is a gentleman's agreement. I don't care what the story is behind it. You got to pay me. And if I have to, I'll come back and sue your ass. And I didn't say anything to him like, I'm going to hurt you or anything like that. But in my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to go back and I'm going to break this guy's legs, because it's just too much money and I worked too hard for it. And now he's putting me in this position where I'm totally screwed. But the bottom line was that I did it to myself in a way. I mean, yeah, he had a part of it, but I should have went to the bank and said, I need a letter of credit. He needs a letter of credit and a guarantee or whatever it is. And I didn't do that. I didn't make sure of it. And also, I understood where he was coming from, but, the bottom line was I wanted my money. So I wanted to get something. I said, listen, send me $1,000. And at least for now, we'll figure things out later. And about a month later, I got the $1,000. Well, it's maybe 3 weeks later. I got the $1,000. And he said to me, listen, unless I get the customers back, you're going to have to call all the customers and ask them to please do business with me. I said, man, I'm not going to do that. They can do whatever they want. It's up to them. That was not part of the deal, was that they stay with you. It's up to them. And you knew that. So, so I started thinking, once he sent the $1,000, I thought, wow, I don't have much money. I don't have any income. What am I going to do? Should I fly back and try to sue his ass? And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to fly back, and I'm not going to have much money, and it's not going to be an overnight thing where I take the case to court, I sue him, get my money in a week, and boom, I'm on my happy way. That's not how it works. I knew it might take a couple of years for me to get that money. So I thought to myself, listen, I'm going to blow the $1,000 on a ticket to go home, or at least some of it, and to stay in a hotel for a couple of days, because I didn't have an apartment. Maybe I could have stayed with a friend or something for a little while, but I couldn't do that forever. And I thought, it's not worth it for that much money. If it had been a couple 100,000 or 100,000, yeah, all right, it would have been worth it. So I was shit out of luck, basically, and I started running really low on money. I had that $1,000, and the rest of the 1,000 I had in the bank. By the time the dust settled, I had his $1,000, and that was it. And I paid my bills, the rent and the electricity and the water and stuff, and I had money for food. But I was thinking to myself, what am I going to do for work? And weeks went by, and I'm thinking, I don't know what to do. I'm looking on the internet for things to do, and the one thing I kept seeing was teaching English. And I thought, man, I'm not a teacher. I can't do this shit, I'm like, I don't want to teach English. And I just kind of kept looking for stuff to do. And really, if you're a foreigner and you come here and you want to look for a job, you're either going to do something that's illegal, or you're going to do some job that it's a shit job. And I didn't come to Thailand to do a shit job. If I wanted to do a shit job, why would I do it here? I would rather live better in the United States because I knew I had something to fall back on. I had my family. If I had to, I could I could use a job database for whatever state that I was going to live in, and try to find a job that way. I could do all kinds of things. There are options if you're living in your home country. When you're living in Thailand, it's either you sink or swim. You run out of money, you're going to have to go to the embassy and have them repatriate you. And so I was like, whoa, man, I have to get it together. I just don't know what am I going to do. And I was talking to my parents, and they were like, oh, well, you're just going to have to come back home. And I was like, no, I don't want to come back home. Come on. And I used to go to this place that was in Nana Plaza. It was called Woodstock, and I think it's still around, but it's at a different location. And it was just a pub. It was like an American-style pub where they sold burgers, and there was people played pool, and there was a lot of regular, everyday people in the place. I mean, people that weren't coming to go whoring. They weren't coming to. I mean, this is during the day that people would go in. It'd be 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and there were no go-go bars open or anything like that. At least there was nothing really happening, and people would go in and play pool and shoot the shit and have a nice lunch, and then maybe play darts, and then they would leave. Or they would. Some people sometimes, because I used to do this, they'd stay there for hours, and they would have a drink or two, and people would stay, and crews of people would come in. There would be different at different times, different people would come in. So it'd be like you're at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and you're with a friend, and then by 4 o'clock some new friends would come in. Hey, what's going on, man? And you ended up staying playing pool all day and all night. And for me, who didn't have anything to do, it was a cheap way to hang out, because I'd milk a Pepsi for 2 hours, and it cost me 60 baht. But the thing is that I knew that by being there, that at least I was around other foreigners, and maybe I could pick their brain a little bit. And I knew this one guy. I'd become friends with him. Not real good friends, but I just talked to him once in a while. His name was Les. And he used to teach. I knew he was an English teacher. And he said to me, listen, give it a shot. Try teaching English. I can get you a job. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah, go right down. It's right down the street here at Central Chitlone. I said, oh, okay. He said, go talk to the guy. His name is John. He's a Brit. He's all right. I said, okay. And so the next day I went in. Well, I made an appointment, and I went in. Of course, I was on time. And I meet the guy, and he's, a little short guy, ruddy face, looked like he had been, like he was hungover or he'd been drinking. He had the red kind of like alcoholic look to him. And the first thing he said was, "Oh, let me show you around." I thought, wow, all right, cool. He said, hey, let me show you here what we got. And it was a big place. And then he said to me, why should I hire you? And I said, I'll come in on time. I won't come in drunk, and I'll do the best I can. Boom, you're hired. I said, hallelujah. Whoo. All right, baby. I pulled it out. Somehow I managed to do it. I got the job, and I got a source of income. Yeah, baby, I can stay. I don't have to go home. And all right. That afternoon I was teaching English, and I gotta say I didn't particularly like it. I enjoy teaching boxing. I enjoy teaching people about Thailand. I enjoy some things. That I pass along some knowledge of some things. But I don't enjoy teaching the English language. To me, it's a boring subject, and I just didn't like it. And in fact, the first month I worked there, I made about 26,000 baht, and it was enough. But I mean, it was enough to pay the bills, and I wasn't starving. But that was it. I didn't have anything left over. And then the next month, I think I made 30,000. The month after that, I made like 30,000. And then I think I worked there for about 4 months. And out of those 4 months, the most I made was like 35,000 baht. which was, you got to remember that the bot was at about 45 or something like that, 45 or 50. So, I mean, this was peanuts, but it was paying the bills. And that is a key to staying here, is that if you want to really stay here for the long time, just make sure you pay the bills. And if you pay the bills, usually if you got half a brain and if you are a little bit hungry and you're a bit of a hustler, you'll figure something out in time. But you got to keep paying the bills, or you don't want to end up on the street, and then you're screwed. I got this job, I'm paying the bills and everything. And then, there's two things I remember about my teaching English. Well, three. One, I didn't really like it. Two, I remember the fat kid sitting in my classroom, who he kind of looked like he wanted to say something, but he hadn't raised his hand, so I didn't call on him. And I'm teaching, and kids are raising their hands. They're asking me questions once in a while, which that doesn't happen very much. But I told them, if you have any questions, please ask me. Don't be scared. And finally, the kid keeps looking. He's really antsy, and I'm thinking to myself, what's the matter with this kid? All of a sudden, he shoots his hand up, and he says, teacher, put key. And basically, the kid had to take a shit. He's sitting there holding it, pinching his cheeks together. He's too shy to ask me if he can go to the toilet. And finally, he had enough, and it looked like he was going to lose it. And he thrust his arm up in the air. And I always remember that poor kid. And I said, yes, go, And everybody was laughing. And he came back, and everybody was laughing. He had a little look on his face. And the other thing I remember is that near the end of my time as an English teacher, there were two girls that I knew, and they were friends. I mean, they were kind of friends that I'd messed around with, and I knew, and fairly well. And they said to me, "Listen, you've been nice to us, and we'd like to take you out for your birthday." I said, "Oh, cool, So we go out, and they like to party, and I had mellowed out, but I still, once in a while, and now it's quite a bit different. I don't really, I'm not a big drinker, and but back then I was like, what? You're gonna buy me all the drinks? Okay, sure, man, cool, And they lined up the shots. They got B-52s and bloody abortions and whatever else there is. Shots of tequila, Goldschlager, Jägermeister, just you name it, we drank it. And I ended up shit-faced in some bar, nodding out because I was so drunk. And they dragged me back to my apartment. And the next day I had to go to work and teach. Well, I woke up about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I thought, oh shit, I'm supposed to teach. Oh shit, it's 1 o'clock. I already missed my class. No, I didn't miss. They're gonna fire me. Shit. And I called up and I said, was I supposed to teach this morning? Because I thought it was tomorrow. I'm so sorry. And they said, we got somebody to cover for you. Don't worry about it. I said, okay. Whew, I lucked out on that one. I didn't lose my job. And so what happened then was one of my buddies contacted me. This is the buddy who told me you're out of control. And he had a friend who had a print shop down in, well, he had just bought a print shop in the south of Thailand. And he knew that I had been a printer. And so he said, come on down. I got a job for you. I said, well, how much does it pay? 30,000 plus a place to live, and I'll pay all the utilities. I said, wow, that's probably close to 40 grand. I thought, it's not great by any means, but hey, it's better than teaching English. So I gave my notice, and a couple of weeks later, I flew down to Phuket. I had my own apartment. I think it was called the Sky Place. It was like, I don't know how many floors, 15 floors, 20 floors, and I was on one of the higher floors, which I didn't like because I just don't like being up there, especially here in Thailand. If you can, Get a floor, like on the first or second floor. Don't get the 20th floor. It's just, think about it. And anyway, so I started working for the guy. I go in, he's got this print shop, but his machines were complete shit. And when I mean shit, if you know anything about printing or offset printing, there are rollers on the printing press, and those rollers are what carry the ink to the plate that's on. There's a cylinder, and the plate wraps around that cylinder, and the rollers carry the ink to that cylinder, and then on the plate there's places that will carry the ink, and there is a chemical that's rubbed onto the plate that will make the ink not adhere. Well, if the rollers are uneven, or they're swollen, or there's pits or holes or gouges in them, then they won't carry the ink evenly. And his rollers were completely thrashed. And I was like, dude, you can't. This machine is a piece of shit. How are you going to do any business? The thing about printing is you're using chemicals. This is a science. You need to have at least decent equipment. You can't have garbage equipment. He said, we got to make it work. I don't have any money. I socked everything I could into this thing. We got to make it work. So we rubber banded things together, and we used Velcro. And I would do things like, this is an old trick, but if there's a little spot that doesn't carry the ink real well, you stand there with a spatula, and you just tap a little bit of ink on that spot. You just continue to do that as much as necessary, and in that way you're putting extra ink on so that it will carry that ink. And we made it work. I mean, we made it work for about a year, but I can't imagine he was making very much money, but he was making enough to pay the bills and pay me, which was, at the time, which is all I really cared about. And then the thing is with the guy is that he was never the kind of guy that would be like, okay, I'm there at 8 o'clock and we're working until 5 or until the work is done, and that's what we're going to do. No, it would be, I'm going out tonight. You want to come with me? I'll buy the drinks. Okay, sure. I would wake up and go to work at 8 o'clock, hungover. He would sleep in. He would come in at 12 o'clock, and then I would just sit there for 4 hours doing nothing, playing on the computer. Obviously, I knew that this wasn't exactly the most efficient way to run a business, and I knew how many orders were going out, and I would figure it out. And I had actually figured out, because I ran a print shop. I ran a department of a print shop, of a company that was a print shop. I ran that department. It was a spa company for a couple of years, and I knew what it took to be able to make it profitable. And I had told them, this is how much money you got to make at the current prices, and you're only making about 20%, 25% of what you need to make in order to be profitable and to pay me and to have yourself a little income and give yourself a little income. And it's not working, which I did it because he really didn't have a clue. I should have probably just kept my mouth shut, but he was my friend, and I thought, listen, at the end of the day, I don't want the guy losing his ass, and I want him to know where we stand so that we can make any changes that are necessary in order to make the business work. In the end, it didn't work. After a while, he said, I gotta pack it in. This is not going to work. And I said, well, what about me? You got anything for me? You got a little payout? You got a job for me that I can do? What are you going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. And no, you're on your own. I said, oh, shit. And that was the end of that. And I went back to Bangkok. I had a little bit of money, not much. I was back in the same predicament. I called my parents and I said, what do you think I should do? And they said, I think you should come home. So I started researching places to come home, and I chose Seattle, Washington. I had been seeing a girl in Phuket, not real seriously, but been seeing her off and on. And I didn't know if we were going to go anywhere because it was a little too soon, and wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a real serious relationship. But she found out that I was going to leave. I told her, I'm getting ready to leave.
going to go back. Not sure if I'll be back or not. And she said, well, listen, why don't you come to Udon? I'm going home, and if you want, you can stay with me for a couple of days, and then, when you're ready to leave, you go back home. I said, okay. So that's what I did. I bought myself a ticket before leaving, went to Udon. She came to Bangkok, and then we went up to Udon. Stayed there for a few days, and I went to Seattle. Flew to Seattle. So instead of checking into a hotel or trying to find an apartment immediately, I figured I didn't have a whole lot of cash, and I had to find some work really quick. So I went to a temporary agency. They got me a job working as a paper cutter because I had experience in the printing industry. And it was a union shop. They got me a 2-week gig. It was $15 an hour. So I knew that I was going to be able to make some cash, and that, it wasn't a huge amount, but it would help. So the thing is, I didn't have any place to stay. So for the first couple of days, I stayed at a place called the Green Turtle Hostel. It was cheap. I was staying with like 3 other guys in a room. And it was while I was in this little hostel that I met a guy. He was an older guy. He was about 60. And I started talking to the guy, and he said, oh, well, where are you from? What are you doing? What's going on? We started getting to know one another. And he said, oh, well, if you need some work, I can get you a job. He said, go work on a fishing boat. And I said, well, I've never done that before. Doesn't matter. Just hard work. You're going to bust your ass, but you'll come home with money because you don't have to pay for a place to stay. You don't have to pay for food, yada, yada, yada. And I said, wow, that sounds great. So he gave me a few phone numbers, and I was working at this print shop. It was a huge print shop. And I was cutting paper all day, every day, which, if you know anything about being a paper cutter, is a boring as hell job. If you're going to cut a paper for a particular order, or just if you're cutting paper for, say, 20 minutes, a half an hour, that's fine. But when you're doing it every day, all day long, the thing with it is that you need to be decent at math. And you always have to be thinking, because if you screw up on one of the cuts, then you could ruin the paper for the order, and basically you're ruining all that paper. You could ruin hundreds, even thousands of dollars of paper if you make the wrong cuts. So I had to always be alert, and there was none of this slacking off, taking a break. There was none of that. It was solid hard work. And, you're throwing the paper, and the paper's heavy, and but I was happy to have a job. So after about 2 weeks, they said, the gig is up. I'm sorry. I said, oh, well, is there any chance I can get on here, or what's the deal, Well, no, we don't have any openings. However, we do have an opening in Oregon. I said, Oregon? Portland, Oregon. And I don't know what it was, but just something about Portland, Oregon. I said, no, I don't want to move there. And the thing is, now that I think about it, if I had moved there, it probably my life would have went in an entirely different direction. Instead, I said, nope, I'm sorry, I don't want to. And there were a couple of days went by, and then I got a phone call from one of the places I had called. It was a seafood place. And they said, listen, can you come in and take a physical? Sure, no problem. When? Tomorrow. Okay. So the very next day I went down, I took this physical, and they said, we'll be in touch. The next morning they called me up. You passed. Are you interested in working for us? Definitely. When? Tomorrow morning you leave for Alaska. I said, okay, cool. The next morning, I meet them at their at the at their office, and they take me and they get me all set up with a ticket, and I get on a plane. And actually, there's a couple other people, and I don't know how long it took. I really don't remember the specifics, but we flew to Anchorage, and then we flew on a little small plane to another location, and then they took us by helicopter to the ship. And so by that afternoon, I was on the ship. I'd met the captain. He said, "Do you want to start work?" I said, "Sure." I said, "Can I, take an hour or so to get squared away?" And is that all right? And he said, "Sure, no problem. Come down as soon as you're ready to work." I said, "Okay." So about an hour later, I came down, started working, and I worked for the next 10 weeks on that ship. I was a processor, processing nasty crab, and a lot of the time I was putting the crab into the freezer, which wasn't a terrible job because I could have been grinding the legs of the crab and getting the shit off of them. So it wasn't a bad job. And then I was working as an assistant deckhand, and that was pretty cool because I got, sometimes you're standing around on the deck and you're waiting for something to come to be brought over, or some pallets to be brought, or whatever it is. But you're constantly working outside in the cool, or rather cold air. You're not down below. And it was nice to once in a while to get up on deck and not be stuck there throwing slimy crab and pushing carts into the freezer and that kind of thing. So I did that. I did that for about 10 weeks. By the time I was done, I had almost 10 grand. Got to Seattle, went back to the Green Turtle, bought an airline ticket to go back to Bangkok, and 3 days later took off, and I was in Bangkok shortly thereafter. And I still didn't know what I was going to do. But I called the girl in Udon. I said, listen, I'm back. You want to see me? Yeah. Where are you? I'm in Udon. Okay. She said, come stay with me. And her mother and father had a house, and then they had this little house that they had given to her that she had, and it was a little ways away. And she said, you can stay with me. I said, okay, cool. And she wasn't real well off, but I wasn't giving her money like, okay, I'll give you this much every month and I'll take care of you. There was none of that. But if we needed to go to the store, her father had a truck, and I'd give money for gas, and then we go to the store, I buy the groceries, and that sort of thing. I just basically carried my weight and a little bit more. I took care of her for a little bit, but not so much financially, more just making sure that there was food on the table, and that we had some decent food to eat, because I like to eat, and I didn't really want to always eat food from down the street that is Gayang or whatever it is. I wanted to eat some food from the grocery once in a while. So anyway, after a couple of months, first of all, I was getting bored out of my head. I was realizing that I don't have much in common with this girl. I mean, it's like once you get done, once the little magical period of screwing your brains out is over, then you've got to figure out, well, what else do we have? And we didn't have anything, because she was very sheltered, and I was not I didn't have the patience to, teach her anything, at least teach her about the world or whatever. I was just like, what, this isn't going to work, And it was around that time I thought, I think I should go back and make some more money because this money is not going to last forever. I had learned my lesson. I wasn't blowing the money or anything like that. But it was dwindling, and I was thinking, I don't know how I'm going to make money, so I'm going to have to go back and do this. And the thing is that I went back, and I thought, here I am. I'm an old hand at this. I've done this before. I've done a season already. I go there. I do another season, and it was god awful because we were on the ship part of the time. Part of the time, I was on shore waiting for another ship to come pick me and a couple other guys up. And then it turned out that we ended up working with salmon, and they didn't need me to do any kind of deck work because we were on shore. So here I am. I'm stuck. I'm doing processing work, which is just a nasty grind. It's a grind. And when I mean it's a grind, it's like, there's times you're working 16 or 18 hours, and then there's times you're working 24, 28, even 30, 32 hours straight. But that's how you make your money. So I wasn't really complaining about it, but, let's be honest, it sucked. So I finish up my time there. And by this time, we're back on the boat, and the captain of the boat had got to know me a little bit because I'd been on 2 tours. And at the end of the season, the captain would call everybody in one by one. They'd spend like 2 or 3 minutes with them. Yeah, how you doing? Everything okay? How'd you feel now? How do you feel during the season? Are you happy? And just whatever. What are you going to do now? That kind of thing. So it came my turn. I go in, and the captain said to me, Scott, you did a good job. I'm happy with you. But, the guys we got on this boat, they're working here because they have no options. They're working here because they're in South Dakota or North Dakota or Montana, and this is a great way for them to make good money. I think you have options. Maybe, you might consider doing something else besides working on the boat. And what had happened, though, I knew what he was saying, and I definitely agreed because I did not like the job. It was just I thought to myself, listen, I can do hard labor. I can work hard. I used to work in a barrel factory, an oil drum factory, when I was a kid, from the time I was about 13 years old till I was 17. And I worked every summer. And then when I was 17, I worked even longer than that. That was bust ass work. I was loading barrels onto a big tractor trailer, and it was hard work. But so I wasn't against hard work, but I just thought I need to be able to do more with myself. And while I had been on the boat, everybody on the boat at some point, they get to the point where they're tired, they're worn out, they're irritable, they don't want to be there, they're ready to go home. At some point, everybody pretty much hits that spot. And there was a guy that I worked with. He was a younger guy. He was about 10, 15 years younger than me. His name was Phil. We were working. I don't remember what happened, but we started to go at it with each other. We were getting ready to have a fight. And I'm thinking, I'm going to beat this kid's ass. And I'm sure he thought the same thing with me. And we're getting ready to go at it. And somebody says, listen, if you guys throw one punch, you're going to get fired. And that's going to be the end of it. And all the money you've earned, it's going to cost you a couple grand to get out of here. And all that money that you earned, you're going to waste it. So don't, calm down and just don't do anything you're going to regret. Now, it turned out that he and I, when we cooled down, we ended up talking, and we got to know each other a little bit, and we actually liked each other. And he was a website designer, and he found out what my predicament was, which was I didn't want to work on the boat anymore, but I didn't really know how I was going to make a go of it in Thailand. And it was around this time that the internet really started picking up, and people were using the internet to make businesses, and they were using websites as their business card and that kind of thing. So he told me, he said, what you should do is make yourself a website. And I said, well, maybe I should just pay somebody. He said, nope. You know what? Learn how to do it. It's not that difficult. Make yourself a website. Sell some products. Find something to sell, and just you can do it. And I was like, wow, And I have him to thank for that, because when I got back, for whatever reason, maybe because of the comfort or the security or whatever, I called the girl back up in Udon. I went and visited her. And I said, I'm going to get an apartment in town. And I knew there was an internet cafe in town because I had been there before, and I knew the owner. And he gave me one computer that I could work on every single day. It was my computer. He wasn't going to let anybody use it. It was off into the corner. And I would go there right when he opened at about 9 in the morning. And I would stay there until 6 or 7 at night, just trying to learn how to make websites. And there was none of this drop and drag, and there was none of that stuff. It was just HTML, and I tried everything I could. I had never done anything like that, so it was completely foreign to me. But somehow, over the course of a couple of months, I learned how to make a site, and I actually put up a couple of pages, and I learned what you're supposed to. Every website should have, and that kind of thing. In the meantime, I got onto eBay, and I had found some products from around town. There were little things that they looked like little Chinese eggs, and they were all painted with like a white tiger or a panda or whatever, a dragon. And I started selling those things, and I started selling these Isan pillows, and then I started selling some material, some silk and silk products. And I sold every little thing that I could. I sold precious gemstones, but they were just like, they were like, they're not fake, but they were the cheaper, I forget what they're called, but they weren't real expensive. And I just found anything. And what I would do is I just buy like 1 or 2 pieces. I take a photo of it, and if it's sold, I buy, instead of buying 1, I buy 2. And if those sold, I would sell a couple more. And what happened was I started earning money. And I had money, and I wasn't spending very much because all I was doing was sitting in the internet cafe all day long, and I would just pay for water, and I would have a lunch and a dinner. And so I wasn't spending the money, and I was starting to make money. And then I couldn't believe it. Wow, I sold something. Wow. And then a couple products started selling better than others. So I started buying more of those. And then the next thing you know, I'm making enough money where I actually was saving money and was building up my account balance again. And around that time, I had completely broken it off with the girl in Udon. And I had said to her, listen, I'm moving back to Bangkok because I had found out that there's a lot more to buy and a lot more things that you could. It was a lot easier to get things, a lot easier to ship things and do things, and I said, I got to be in Bangkok. So slowly but surely, I built things up, and then what happened was that I found out about an event that was going on. And around this time, then some considerable time has gone by, and I was fairly stable. I wasn't real stable, but I was doing a little business here and there, and it was enough to pay the bills. So I wasn't, my account balance wasn't decreasing. Every once in a while it would increase and then it'd go back down a little bit, but I was fairly stable. And it was around this time that I met my wife and started going out with her. And I had calmed down quite a bit. I hadn't completely got everything out of my system, but I was still running around. Every once in a while I go out and, I'd party a little while, but I learned my lesson, and I started going out with her, and then that kind of mellowed me out. And a little bit more. And plus, I was getting a little bit older to where I was like going, man, I don't want to have to go through this shit again. I don't want to have to go through worrying about, do I have to go back home? And do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? And so what I did was when I was in high school and in college, I didn't finish university, but I went to I went to Mount Sac College and I went to Fullerton JC. And when I was there, I took creative writing, I took literature classes, and I also took photography classes. And I honestly, when I was taking photography classes, there was no digital. It was all film, and I had forgotten a lot of things, and things were just starting to change and in the photography industry. But the one thing that I knew was that I could write fairly well. And I knew this because I would have an essay that was due, a 3,000 or 5,000 word essay, and it was due, say, on the 1st. Well, on the 27th or 28th, I hadn't done anything. And I'd say to myself, okay, how am I going to do this? How much time do I have left? All right. I got from 4 o'clock in the afternoon to about 10 at night for 3 nights. I think, okay, I can do this. So I would sit up and I would knock it out. In, say, 2 or 3 days, I would knock out an essay. Maybe it's a 5,000 word essay. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes a little longer. And every time I got an A. I never got anything but an A. And I was always proud of that, but I didn't really ever consider journalism because I thought there's no money in it. Instead of thinking you'll make a decent living and you get to travel and see the world, which is what I really wanted to do. Now, I had done some traveling before, and I had gone to London with a friend, and there were some things there were some places I had gone. So I wasn't completely oblivious to travel. I knew what I was doing. And the thing is that when I found out about this one event, it was a bare knuckle fight that happens every year. And it actually happens twice a year, but it happens during the Songkran Festival. I decided to go to Massat. And I went there, and it was just, for me, it was just fun. But I photographed it, and I just remembered everything. And I went back to my hotel room, and I thought, some magazine has to be interested in this. Now, I don't know where this came from because I wasn't thinking like, I want to get into photography. I want to get into to writing, and I want to be a journalist. And I was sitting in that hotel room, and I thought, you know what? There's got to be somebody that will be interested in this. And I called up Black Belt Magazine, and I called up, I think it was Blitz Magazine, and they were both interested. And they both told me the same thing. Send us the article, and we'll take a look at it, and as long as it's good, we'll run it. Send us the photos, and when can you have it? And I said, how much does it pay? And it wasn't a whole lot, but with the photos and everything, and with 2 magazines accepting it, it wasn't enough really, to where it was like a huge amount, but it was enough to cover the expenses that I incurred by going there. And so I started writing it right when they told me that they would accept it if it was good. I was doing it in a hotel room, and then I went back to my apartment in Bangkok, finished it up, and sent the articles in, sent the photos in. Boom, they got published. And then with that, I thought, wow, maybe I could make some extra money doing this. Until next time, I'm Scott. I'm an American in Bangkok. Chok di la jerkan mai.